A custodial worker discovered confidential papers in an executive's waste bin that she shouldn't have witnessed. Her straightforward gesture of integrity would threaten to destroy everything she had built. However, the events that followed would transform the destinies of both individuals permanently. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Truths Unveiled. Let's begin our story. Rosa Delgado had spent 8 years maintaining office buildings and understood that remaining unseen was precisely how people preferred their custodial staff. At 34, she navigated through the polished hallways of Meridian Financial like a specter, clearing waste receptacles and cleaning surfaces, while the metropolis rested beneath. During most evenings, Rosa labored in solitude on the 15th level, wearing her earphones and contemplating her 12-year-old son Diego, who waited at their residence. The child meant everything to her. The motivation behind working dual custodial positions and accepting every additional shift available. His diabetes treatment expenses exceeded her monthly housing costs. Yet Rosa never voiced complaints. Some individuals received more challenging circumstances than others. That was simply life's reality. Rosa had begun employment at Meridian Financial 3 years prior, following layoffs at the hotel where she'd been employed for 5 years when they reduced their custodial workforce by half. The compensation was superior here, the employment reliable, and the security personnel showed her courtesy. She'd even succeeded in accumulating modest savings for the first time in years. However, Rosa maintained a principle that had secured her employment throughout 8 lengthy years. Focus on your responsibilities, perform excellent work, and avoid involvement in matters beyond your concern. Tonight, this rule would face challenges she never anticipated. The executive level was Rosa's preferred assignment. The offices were roomy and pristine, with plush carpeting beneath her steps. She'd become acquainted with the individual elements in each workspace: family photographs, coffee cups, plants requiring water. Rosa would find herself curious about the existences of these individuals, who earned monthly what she made annually. Throughout the previous year, Rosa had observed something disturbing in these executive offices. Whispered telephone discussions that ceased upon her entrance, documents quickly concealed when she neared desks, a climate of distrust that hadn't existed when she initially started employment here. She'd overheard Morrison during multiple calls, his voice strained with annoyance about client losses to rivals who appeared to anticipate their strategies. Tonight began typically. Rosa reached Meridian Financial at 10 p.m., registered with Jerry the security officer, and used the elevator to reach the 15th floor. She commenced with the corner office belonging to James Morrison, the CEO. Morrison's office was remarkable. Wall-to-wall windows displaying the cityscape, leather furnishings costing more than Rosa's vehicle, and a mahogany workspace the dimensions of her kitchen table. Rosa had maintained this office for 3 years, and had perhaps encountered Morrison personally 12 times, always hurrying past her as though she was invisible. Rosa cleared the small waste container adjacent to Morrison's desk, then proceeded to the larger receptacle near his meeting table. While lifting the bag, several documents fell onto the floor. That moment changed everything. Rosa exhaled and knelt to gather the papers, attempting to maintain their organization as she'd been instructed. One document had become trapped beneath the conference table support. As Rosa retrieved it, her gaze caught several words that chilled her blood. Confidential client data transfer, Patterson Industries account. Rosa's hands began trembling. She should avert her eyes. She should simply collect the documents and place them in her bag without reading further. However, there in the margins was handwriting that clearly didn't belong on official corporate papers. Someone had written notes regarding selling information, contact details, meeting dates. Rosa stared at the proof in her shaking hands, her pulse beating so loudly she was certain the surveillance cameras could detect it. She might possess only a high school education, but she wasn't foolish. Someone was duplicating confidential client data and marketing it to competitors, and now she possessed evidence. Rosa surveyed Morrison's vacant office, the burden of her discovery pressing against her chest. She should simply discard the papers and pretend she'd never seen them. Becoming involved in executive affairs was precisely the behavior that resulted in custodians being terminated without recommendations, without compensation, without hope of securing another position. However, as Rosa held the incriminating evidence, a voice whispered the question that would torment her throughout the night. What if remaining silent meant others would suffer? What Rosa didn't realize was that her next choice would initiate a sequence of events that would alter not only her existence, but the destiny of everyone employed at Meridian Financial. Rosa spent the following 20 minutes in Morrison's office, her hands trembling as she arranged the scattered documents. The more she read, the more nauseated she became. These weren't merely random papers. They contained sensitive data about Meridian Financial's most significant clients, information that in improper hands could ruin lives and enterprises. The handwritten annotations were clearly added subsequently in different ink. Someone had taken Morrison's confidential papers, copied the client data, and made comprehensive notes about marketing it. Then they discarded the evidence, assuming nobody would examine it. They hadn't anticipated Rosa. Rosa considered Diego sleeping at home, trusting that his mother would always make correct decisions. She recalled her grandmother's words, "Miga, doing the right thing is always your problem." However, doing the right thing could cost Rosa everything she'd labored for. Rosa had never composed a message to anyone above her position in her entire professional life. But sitting in Morrison's conference room at 2 a.m., she retrieved a piece of paper and began writing in her careful script. Mr. Morrison, I discovered these documents scattered in your waste bin. I believe someone is duplicating your client information and selling it. The handwritten notes don't match your writing style. I apologize for reading your private papers, but I felt you should be informed. Rosa Delgado, night custodial staff. Rosa's hands were shaking violently as she attached her note to the documents with a paperclip and positioned them at the center of Morrison's desk. Then she completed cleaning his office, trying to convince herself she'd made the correct choice. However, as Rosa descended in the elevator that evening, one thought continued echoing. She might have just ruined her own existence to rescue a company that didn't even acknowledge her presence. What Rosa couldn't have foreseen was that by morning, her simple gesture of honesty would trigger a corporate upheaval that would reach the highest levels of authority. The following evening felt like approaching her own execution. Rosa arrived at work to discover Jerry, the security guard, awaiting her, his typically friendly expression tense with discomfort. Rosa, Mr. Morrison requests to see you in his office before you begin tonight. Rosa's heart sank. This was it. She was being dismissed for examining confidential documents, all because she couldn't mind her own affairs. As Rosa rode the elevator to the 15th floor, her mind raced through the terrifying questions that had prevented sleep all day. How would she explain this to Diego? How long would her savings endure? Would Morrison pursue charges for corporate espionage? Morrison's office lights were brilliant, and through the glass walls she could observe him seated at his desk, his expression unreadable. However, Rosa noticed something that made her stomach drop further. He wasn't alone. 2 other men in costly suits flanked his desk, their faces stern and official-looking. Rosa's throat became dry. She didn't know if she was about to be arrested or offered something worse. Rosa knocked gently on the door, her hand trembling. "Come in." James Morrison was younger than Rosa had expected, perhaps early 40s, with weary eyes and the type of expensive suit that cost more than she earned in 6 months. However, tonight, those tired eyes appeared dangerous. He gestured to a chair across from his desk. The other 2 men observed her with the cold evaluation of people accustomed to destroying lives. Rosa couldn't determine if they were attorneys, investigators, or something more threatening. "Sit down, Miss Delgado." Rosa perched on the chair's edge, her custodial uniform feeling like a mark of shame in the elegant office. Morrison held up the papers she'd left on his desk, and Rosa noticed his knuckles were white with tension. The silence extended, each second feeling like forever. Rosa could hear her own heartbeat echoing in her ears. "These documents," he said finally, his voice like ice. "How exactly did you encounter them?" Rosa's mouth felt parched. "They were scattered on the floor by your waste container, sir. I was merely trying to clean up, and you felt it was proper to examine confidential client information." The accusation struck Rosa like a physical blow. "No, sir, I didn't intend to read them, but when I saw the handwriting in the margins," her voice faded. How could she explain without appearing like a criminal caught in the act? Morrison leaned back in his chair, and Rosa glimpsed something that terrified her. He was studying her like a prosecutor about to destroy a defendant. "Miss Delgado, do you comprehend that these documents contain sensitive client information worth millions of dollars?" "Yes, sir. Information that could be sold to competitors for substantial amounts of money?" Rosa felt her world crumbling. "Sir, I would never." "Miss Delgado," Morrison's voice cut through her protest like a blade. "I need you to understand something very clearly. Corporate espionage is a federal offense. People are imprisoned for stealing the type of information you possessed last night." The room spun around Rosa. Prison. They believed she was stealing company secrets. She was going to lose everything. Her job, her freedom, Diego's future. However, Morrison wasn't finished. He stood and walked to his window, his back to Rosa. The 2 silent men continued watching her with expressions that revealed nothing. When Morrison spoke again, his voice carried a weight that made her blood freeze. "What I need to know, Miss Delgado, is whether you're working alone or if someone instructed you to do this." Rosa felt tears beginning, but she forced herself to speak clearly. "Mr. Morrison, I swear on my son's life, I was just trying to help. I thought you should know someone was copying your files." Morrison turned around slowly, and for a long moment the office was silent except for Rosa's rapid breathing and the distant hum of the city below. Then something shifted in Morrison's expression, something Rosa couldn't interpret. "Miss Delgado," he said quietly, "are you aware that my head of client services, David Richardson, has access to all of these accounts? He also has a company key and stays late several nights weekly." Morrison held up one of the papers, but now his voice carried a different kind of intensity. "The handwriting in these margins, it belongs to him." Rosa felt like the ground was shifting beneath her feet. Morrison walked back to his desk and sat down, but his posture was completely different now. The prosecutorial ice was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like relief. "Miss Delgado, you didn't commit corporate espionage, you exposed it." The words hit Rosa like lightning. "What?" "Richardson has been photographing confidential documents and selling the information to our competitors. Your note helped us realize we had a mole in our executive team." Morrison's voice was gaining strength, more animated. "We've been hemorrhaging clients for 6 months, losing every major bid. We thought we were just unlucky." Rosa felt dizzy. So I wasn't wrong? You were absolutely right. And Miss Delgado, Morrison looked her directly in the eyes. You may have saved this company from complete destruction. The revelation hit Rosa like a tidal wave. She hadn't destroyed her life. She'd saved an entire company. But Morrison wasn't finished with his revelations. He gestured to the two men who'd been silently watching this entire exchange. Miss Delgado, meet Agent Collins and Agent Martinez from the FBI's Corporate Crime Division. We called them immediately after reading your note. Rosa's eyes went wide. The FBI was here because of her custodial discovery. Richardson has been feeding information to Patterson Industries for 6 months, Agent Collins explained. They've been underbidding Meridian on every major proposal because they knew exactly what the competition was offering. We estimate he's stolen over $2 million worth of proprietary information. Morrison leaned forward, his expression intense. Mr. Delgado, I have to ask you something crucial, and I need you to be completely honest. Rosa nodded, still reeling from everything she'd learned. Did anyone offer you money for this information? Did Richardson or anyone else approach you about copying documents? No, sir, Rosa said firmly. I've never even spoken to Mr. Richardson. I just saw the papers and thought you should know. Morrison exchanged glances with the FBI agents, then turned back to Rosa. You work 2 custodial jobs, don't you, to support your son's medical expenses? Rosa was surprised he knew about Diego. Yes, sir. Morrison's voice became very quiet, very serious. So you're telling me that when you found information worth potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars on the black market, your first instinct was to give it to me for free? Rosa felt confused by the question. It wasn't mine to sell, sir. It belonged to you and your clients. The silence that followed was deafening. Morrison stared at her for what felt like an eternity, and Rosa could see something profound happening behind his eyes. Finally, Agent Martinez spoke up. Mr. Morrison, we have everything we need to move forward with Richardson's arrest. Miss Delgado's testimony will be crucial to our case. Morrison nodded slowly, but his attention remained fixed on Rosa. Miss Delgado, in my 15 years running this company, I've learned that character is the rarest commodity in business. I've had executives with MBA degrees from Harvard steal from me. I've had vice presidents with decades of experience sell out their colleagues for quick profit. Morrison picked up Rosa's handwritten note, holding it like it was made of gold. But a night cleaner making minimum wage found evidence of corporate espionage and immediately did the right thing, even though it could have cost her the only steady job she has. Rosa wasn't sure where this was leading, but something in Morrison's tone had changed again. You know, Miss Delgado, this company has been struggling with more than just stolen information. We've lost our way ethically. I've been looking for someone to help rebuild trust, someone who understands what real integrity looks like. Morrison paused, seeming to gather his thoughts. I'm going to ask you something that might sound impossible. Morrison leaned forward. How would you feel about a career change? Rosa blinked. Sir, I need someone I can trust absolutely. Someone who understands that loyalty and integrity matter more than credentials or connections. Morrison's voice was gaining strength, conviction. I'd like to offer you a position as my executive assistant. Rosa was sure she'd misheard. Your assistant. You'd handle my calendar, coordinate meetings, help with client communications, serve as my liaison with our security team. Morrison was speaking faster now, as if the idea was crystallizing as he spoke. The position comes with full health insurance, a salary of $65,000 a year, and direct access to me whenever integrity issues arise. Rosa felt like she couldn't breathe. $65,000 was more than she made at both custodial jobs combined. With health insurance, Diego's medication would be covered completely. Mr. Morrison, I don't have any office experience. I don't know anything about business. Morrison's face broke into the first genuine smile Rosa had seen from him. Mr. Delgado, you just saved my company from ruin because you knew the difference between right and wrong. Everything else we can teach you. Agent Collins cleared his throat. Mr. Morrison, we'll need Miss Delgado available for Richardson's trial. Her testimony about finding the documents will be central to our case. Of course, Morrison said. Rosa, you'll be helping us ensure that Richardson faces justice for what he's done. Rosa felt overwhelmed by the magnitude of what was happening. 12 hours ago, she'd been a minimum wage cleaner, worried about paying Diego's medical bills. Now she was going to be a corporate executive helping the FBI prosecute a white-collar criminal. There's one more thing, Morrison said, pulling out another document. After what you've shown me tonight, I'm convinced this company needs fundamental change. The board has approved the creation of a new position, Director of Corporate Integrity, someone to ensure we always operate with the highest ethical standards. Rosa looked at the job description, then back at Morrison. You want me to be in charge of corporate integrity? I can't think of anyone better qualified than the woman who risked her livelihood to leave an honest note on my desk. 6 months later, Rosa sat in her corner office on the 14th floor, reviewing compliance reports and preparing for a board meeting where she'd present her quarterly ethics assessment. She'd traded her custodial uniform for professional clothes, her night shift for regular business hours, and her invisible status for a position where Morrison relied on her judgment daily. Richardson had been sentenced to 8 years in federal prison for corporate espionage. The trial had made national news, with Rosa's testimony highlighting how ordinary employees could be the first line of defense against corporate crime. Diego's diabetes was now completely manageable with the health insurance. And for the first time in years, Rosa wasn't constantly worried about money. But the best part was simpler than that. She was proud of the work she did, proud of the trust Morrison had placed in her, proud of the example she was setting for Diego. "Mom," Diego had said recently, "my teacher says you're famous for catching a corporate spy." Rosa had smiled. "Miko, I am famous for doing the right thing when it mattered." That evening, as Rosa prepared to leave her office, Morrison stopped by her desk. "Rosa, the Patterson Industries case just settled. They're paying us $47 million in damages for the stolen information they used against us." Rosa looked up from her computer. "That's incredible." Morrison's expression grew serious. "Rosa, I want you to understand something. That settlement happened because you had the courage to speak up when it would have been easier to stay silent. $47 million in recovery, hundreds of jobs saved, and a corrupt executive in prison, all because one honest woman decided to do the right thing." As Rosa drove home that night, she thought about the chain reaction that had started with scattered papers on an office floor. One moment of choosing courage over comfort had changed everything, not just for her and Diego, but for an entire company, its employees, and all the clients whose trust had been betrayed. She'd learned that the most important moments in life often came disguised as simple choices: stay silent or speak up, play it safe or do what's right, trust that integrity matters or assume it doesn't. Rosa had made the right choice in a corporate office at 2 a.m., and it had led her to a life she'd never imagined possible. But more than that, it had proven that character wasn't about titles or salaries or corner offices. It was about what you did when no one was watching, when you had everything to lose and nothing to gain except the knowledge that you'd done the right thing, and the right thing had led to everything she'd never dared to dream. Love this story? Hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more. Don't forget to check out the video currently on your screen. You won't want to miss it. See you in the next one.